What was meant to be a calm Thanksgiving weekend at a secluded farmhouse in Burlingame, Kansas, quickly descended into a nightmare. On the evening of November 29, 2009, an unsettling call reached the sheriff's office. A nearby resident reported seeing an abandoned vehicle and a man behaving suspiciously, carrying something along the road before driving off at high speed. When deputies arrived at the farmhouse, they had no idea what awaited them inside. The front door stood ajar and the interior was in disarray. Blood marked the floors and faint pleas for help echoed from upstairs. With every step forward, the scene grew more disturbing. How had such devastation unfolded? What could drive such violence within a family home? The answer lies in a history of control, rage, and a breaking point that altered everything. Stay with us as we piece together the events of that night and the years that led up to it. James Kaylor seemed to have everything going for him. A six-figure income, a secure profession, and what looked like an ideal family life. His wife Karen fit the image of the devoted stay-at-home mother, focusing all her energy on raising their three children, Emily, Lauren, and Sean. From the outside, the Kaylor household appeared to be the picture of success, happy, prosperous, and united. Yet beneath this carefully maintained exterior existed a network of sacrifices, compromises, and unspoken hardships that quietly influenced their lives. Karen once had ambitions of her own and was studying engineering when she met James. But their rapid romance led her to a life-changing choice in December 1985. After they married, Karen left college to support James as his career began to take off. The couple relocated to Colorado where James secured a promising position and Karen stepped fully into the role of a supportive spouse committed to building a future alongside him. A significant milestone came on April 8, 1991 with the birth of their first daughter, Emily. Karen devoted herself completely to motherhood as James' career continued to advance. However, Karen's mother, Pat, noticed that Karen frequently put James' needs ahead of her own. Even during the exhausting early months of raising a child, Pat grew concerned that Karen was slowly losing her sense of self while chasing their shared vision. In 1992, James' job led the family to relocate to Greenville, Texas, and Lauren was born in May 1993. Both Emily and Lauren flourished in different ways. Emily excelled academically and showed musical talent, singing and playing the drums, while Lauren gravitated toward athletics and music, learning to play the bass guitar. Although life in Texas appeared perfect on the surface, underlying problems began to emerge with one of the earliest sources of conflict centering on the idea of having another child. Karen was satisfied with having 2 children, but James pushed for a third. In the end, they struck a compromise by putting their decision into a formal agreement. Karen agreed to have another child on the condition that James would get a vasectomy. Sean was born in March 1999. Completing their deal and James followed through with the procedure, bringing their family Expansion to a close. As James' career continued to advance, the Kaylor moved to Texas, settling near Dallas. Once again, Karen adjusted, carving out a role within the local community. She became president of a mother's group, formed close friendships, and kept her children involved in various activities. Emily remained strong academically and musically. Lauren flourished in both band and athletics, and Sean appeared to show great potential as a young baseball player. From the outside, their life appeared ideal. But James' unyielding drive for perfection slowly began to wear everyone down. He imposed unrealistically high expectations, particularly on his family. Lauren frequently endured his criticism for failing to earn straight A's like Emily. This inflexible attitude carried over into his career, where coworkers described him as arrogant and condescending, especially toward women in leadership positions. His fixation on image and control pushed others away, including those at home. James' controlling nature was especially clear in financial matters. Despite earning $180,000 a year, he tightly controlled household spending. Karen was given a fixed weekly allowance and had to account for every purchase with receipts. James' reputation for frugality was well known. He borrowed tools rather than buying them, and even depended on coworkers to cover the cost of his outings to strip clubs. Each night at 8:30 p.m. Karen was required to be in bed. Any departure from the schedule was met with anger or even worse consequences. Friends observed how Karen spoke in hushed tones during late phone calls, repeatedly apologizing and hurrying to hang up to avoid provoking James. Not even being sick excused her from his expectations, and resistance carried the risk of his anger turning physical. For Karen, going along with his demands often felt like the safest option. It hadn't always been this extreme. In the early stages of their relationship, James' controlling behavior was less obvious, but over time it became increasingly oppressive. At one point, he proposed involving another woman in their relationship, suggesting it would add excitement. Karen felt deeply uneasy about the idea, yet found it difficult to refuse. Longing for an escape and a sense of independence, Karen secretly joined a gym. Fitness had always been important to her, and the gym became a refuge. Since James refused to cover the cost of a membership, Karen baked cakes and took on odd jobs to pay for it herself. By January 2006, she had saved enough to join Powerhouse Gym, where she soon became a familiar face. Her commitment to training quickly showed results. She later obtained a part-time position as a personal trainer. James unexpectedly agreed to this, but only under one condition. She had to be home before the children returned from school. Karen thrived in the job and formed new friendships. At the same time, the gym became a place where she could speak openly about her deteriorating marriage, sharing details of the frequent arguments, James' temper, and the increasing strain within their home. The arguments frequently became physical, leaving Karen with Bruises she attempted to conceal. Those close to her were well aware of her unhappiness. Around this time, Karen met Sonny, a fellow trainer who was calm, supportive, and the complete opposite of James. Sonny became someone Karen trusted, and their connection gradually developed into a romantic relationship. There was widespread speculation about how Karen and Sonny's relationship began. Some believed James' earlier suggestion of adding a third person had paved the way, while others felt the affair started naturally without his awareness. Regardless of how it began, the relationship eventually became known. It evolved into a three-person dynamic, with James even encouraging it, sending Sonny flirtatious messages, buying gifts for both women, and supporting their weekend trips together. Later, however, he denied having any role in encouraging the relationship. In 2008, James portrayed Karen as the one responsible for the collapse of their marriage and used it as a means to regain control. He took a higher-paying position in Columbia, Missouri, forcing Karen to abandon her life in Texas and leave Sonny behind. Karen was devastated. Her children were deeply committed to their activities, and she had established strong roots in the Weatherford community. But once again, James' choices took precedence over her own. James moved forward with the relocation, leaving Karen to close out their life in Texas. Unknown to him, Karen and Sonny chose to continue their relationship long distance. When Karen and the children eventually joined James in Missouri, he believed their marriage had been repaired. He even permitted Karen to enroll at the University of Missouri to pursue a degree in health sciences while continuing to work as a fitness instructor. But Karen, having experienced freedom with Sonny, couldn't settle back into her old life. She longed for independence, which only clashed with James' obsessive need for control. He began tracking her every move, emails, phone calls, and even her whereabouts. The tension reached a critical point on New Year's Eve 2008. At a party in Weatherford, neither James nor Karen expected Sonny to attend, but she did. Karen's happiness at seeing Sonny was obvious. They laughed, hugged, and shared drinks in a way that made it clear their connection was far from over. For James, it was a public humiliation and a direct affront to his authority. His anger surged as he realized his hold over Karen was slipping, and the facade of his perfect family was unraveling before him. James, unable to control his rage, confronted Karen in front of everyone, shouting accusations of infidelity. Karen refused to back down and kissed Sonny openly in front of the guests. The scene stunned everyone, and the host, uneasy with the escalating drama, asked them to leave. The argument continued onto the front lawn, where James' anger turned physical. He shoved Karen, causing her to fall and strike her head on the ground. By the following morning, the consequences were clear. Karen, reflecting on the chaos, began to question how she had been confronting James. She suggested to Sonny that they take a break, but Sonny firmly disagreed, emphasizing that the true problem was James' abusive behavior. Worried for Karen's safety, Sunny urged her to take action. In January 2009, Karen finally stood her ground and filed for divorce. Although Karen continued living in the house, she moved into a separate bedroom and maintained her long-distance relationship with Sunny. James, however, refused to let go. He obsessively monitored her emails, tracked her whereabouts, and even intercepted greeting cards from Sunny. Every time Karen made plans with Sunny, James found a way to interfere. His jealousy fueling increasingly irrational behavior at work. James' co-workers began noticing his unraveling. He carried a family photo album everywhere, showing it to anyone who would listen, while lamenting, "Why doesn't Karen want this perfect family?" His erratic actions made those around him uncomfortable. But James was too consumed by obsession to care. By March 2009, tensions reached a peak following a city council meeting where James delivered a speech. James and Karen got into another heated argument, and this time, his anger turned violent. He physically blocked Karen from leaving, cornering her against a cabinet and assaulting her. Karen called the police, and James was arrested for third-degree domestic assault. In her statement, Karen described his escalating violent and controlling behavior, while James downplayed the incident, insisting he had only been trying to hug her. The bruises on Karen's body told a very different story. Shortly after, she moved out with the children, withdrawing $50,000 from their joint account and renting a home across Colombia, signaling her determination to break free from James' control. For James, the arrest was disastrous. As a public figure, the incident made headlines, and his co-workers increasingly spoke out about his erratic behavior. Unable to repair his reputation, James was forced to resign, officially citing family issues. Though his dismissal was inevitable, with his career in ruins and his family gone, he retreated to his parents' farm in Kansas, hoping that hard work would bring clarity. Instead, the isolation intensified his obsession. He became fixated on Karen, unable to comprehend why she had left him. In his mind, he had been the perfect husband and provider, refusing to accept that his controlling and abusive behavior had driven her away. His obsession soon turned toxic. He began stalking Karen, reading her texts, emails, and even private cards from Sunny. He hurled homophobic insults at both women, despite previously encouraging Karen's relationship with Sunny. His anger flared when his daughter began distancing themselves from him. Emily, his eldest, defied James by choosing a college he disapproved of, which he took as a personal betrayal. When one of his daughters revealed her bisexuality on Facebook, James reacted angrily, blaming Karen for corrupting their children. In a desperate attempt to regain control, he compiled an extensive file against Karen, amassing over 3,500 pages of so-called evidence for his divorce attorney. The files included screenshots of Karen's private messages, detailed notes on her visits with Sunny, and unfounded claims that the women had behaved inappropriately around the Children. Despite his efforts, none of the accusations were substantiated, and his obsession only further isolated him from the life he had once tightly controlled. James' behavior grew increasingly erratic and dangerous, and he even confided to friends about wanting to harm Sonny, though no one took him seriously. Despite his anger toward Karen and Sonny, James was involved in multiple affairs, underscoring his instability and contradictions. Amid the chaos, one relationship remained relatively steady. His bond with his son Sean. Unlike his fractured ties with Karen and his daughters, James made an effort to stay close to Sean, spending time hunting and fishing together, clinging to this connection as the last remnant of his disintegrating family. Sean represented a fragile hope, a bond that had not yet been broken. By Thanksgiving 2009, tensions were running high. Karen, trying to preserve what remained of her family, planned a visit to her grandmother Dorothy's farmhouse in Burlingame, Kansas, bringing her children and Sonny along. The day after Thanksgiving, Karen went to pick up Sean from James' house to join the family gathering. Dorothy, 89 years old, lived in a small, quiet town with fewer than 1,000 residents. The visit was intended to be a peaceful holiday gathering, but it ended in unimaginable horror. On the evening of November 29, 2009, a neighbor in Burlingame noticed a suspicious vehicle speeding through the area. They saw a man park, exit the truck, and walk down the road carrying a large object. Moments later, he returned, placed the object in the truck's back seat, and drove off. Concerned, the neighbors called the sheriff's office, fearing a possible robbery. What unfolded, however, was far darker than anyone could have imagined. When deputies arrived at Dorothy's home, they were met with a scene of devastation. Dorothy was found in the kitchen, bleeding heavily from multiple gunshot wounds, barely clinging to life. In the dining room layer, shot twice and already dead. And in the lounge, 18-year-old Emily was discovered behind the couch, also shot twice. The second shot had instantly paralyzed Emily, killing her at the scene. A faint voice from upstairs drew deputies' attention to another victim. 16-year-old Lauren was alive but critically injured, having been shot multiple times. As paramedics worked to stabilize her, she whispered a chilling revelation, "James, my dad." Despite the efforts to save her, Lauren succumbed shortly after Dorothy, leaving Sean as the sole survivor of the massacre. Sean later recounted the events of that horrific night. He and Karen had been sitting together cleaning old coins when James burst through the back door with a rifle. Without hesitation, he opened fire, killing Karen first. Sean's desperate attempt to call for help was cut short by more gunshots echoing through the house. Terrified, he realized he had to escape. He ran through the chaos, racing to a neighbor's house for safety. Authorities quickly obtained a search warrant for James, and it wasn't long before they found his car abandoned in a remote area, looking strangely out of place. Inside, officers discovered a troubling scene. A stash of ammunition, unopened. Bottles of anxiety medication, and a backpack stocked with essentials like soap, toilet paper, and canned food. It was clear James had been preparing for something, yet he himself was nowhere to be found. Hours later, he was spotted wandering along a desolate road, appearing disheveled and lost. When officers approached, he did not resist, simply muttering, "I'm the guy you're looking for," and surrendered without incident. James' defense later argued that his declining mental health, including depression and personality disorders, had pushed him to a breaking point. The defense argued that James had snapped and was not in control of his actions. The prosecution, however, presented a contrasting narrative of premeditation and deliberate intent. Their key evidence included testimony from a psychiatrist who confirmed that, despite James' mental health struggles, he still had the capacity to plan his actions. The fact that he had spared Sean's life highlighted the deliberate nature of his crimes. In 2011, 2 years later, the trial began. Sean, now 12, showed remarkable courage as he took the stand, recounting the horrific events of that night with heartbreaking clarity. He described how his father had stormed into the home and opened fire, killing his mother and sisters. His testimony offered a vivid account of calculated violence, leaving little doubt about James' intent. Sonny also took the stand, recounting details of Karen's abusive relationship with James. She described how his demeanor had shifted dramatically after Karen decided to leave him, turning from indifferent to hostile. While Sonny's testimony was based on her own observations and Karen's accounts, it provided crucial insight into the toxic dynamics that led up to the tragedy. After only 2 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered a unanimous verdict. James was found guilty of capital murder. His insanity defense was rejected and he was sentenced to the ultimate penalty, death. As the sentence was read, James remained emotionless, even requesting to leave the courtroom during the victim impact statements, though he was ordered to stay. Sean's statement during sentencing was perhaps the most poignant moment of the trial, delivered with remarkable strength. "I do not want my dad to receive the death penalty because it would be hard on my grandparents. I do not want my whole family gone." Despite everything James had done, Sean still saw him as a father and struggled with the idea of losing him. James, however, showed no remorse after his sentencing. He began writing letters not to apologize, but to justify his actions. He claimed he had freed Sean from what he described as a toxic environment, revealing his lack of accountability and warped view of his crimes. His legal team quickly filed an appeal, arguing that the jury had been biased and that his mental health had not been properly considered. The Kansas Supreme Court rejected the appeal, confirming that James' mental health had been evaluated during sentencing, but that it did not excuse his actions. His appeal was denied, leaving James on death row as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of his actions. For Sean, life after the tragedy became a testament to resilience. Despite Facing unimaginable loss and trauma, he graduated from high school and built a life for himself in Kansas. His journey serves as a beacon of strength and hope, showing that even in the midst of profound darkness, it is possible to rise above and move forward. While James' crimes left a permanent scar, Sean's perseverance stands as a powerful testament to human endurance. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.